Welcome back. Earlier in the section, we mentioned that Pandas is a Python-based library, which means that to work with Pandas code, we need access to a Python interpreter. But first, let's talk about what Python actually is. You've probably heard of this already. Python is a general-purpose programming language that emphasizes code readability and supports many different programming paradigms. It is one of the most popular and productive programming languages out there. And a programming language is simply a set of standards or rules that translate the code that we write to code that our machine, our computer, understands. And by the way, our computers understand only binary, right? Everything we write and do using computing devices comes down to plain ones and zeros. So in Python, when we say print welcome, we get back some output, which is great. But behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on. So when we say something like print welcome, that code goes into a Python interpreter. It is compiled into bytecode and then interpreted in the Python virtual machine down to binary. And that executes and that produces some output for us to appreciate. Right? Now, there are many implementations of this Python interpreter out there. If we head over to python.org, under downloads, the main link here points to something called CPython, which is the most used implementation of the Python programming language. Now, truthfully, we don't have to worry about all these little details as we move further in the course, but they're good to be aware of. Important point is that the Python programming language itself is just a set of standards. When we say that we have access to Python, we really mean that we have an interpreter up and running, which takes our code and makes it possible for the machine to interpret or run that code. And there are many implementations of this interpreter, the most famous of which is CPython. All right. And the great news is that when we installed Anaconda, we actually got CPython as well, right? We can even see under downloads, alternative implementations. See here that Anaconda is one of the parties that has repackaged CPython with lots of tools related to data management, analysis, and visualization, which is amazing. Okay, why are we talking about Python? We're here to master Pandas. Well, in order to make the most out of this bootcamp, you should be somewhat comfortable with Python itself. As we progress through the course, we'll often stop to cover specific Python features that we are using, but in any case, some familiarity with Python will be very helpful. Now, if this is the first time you're seeing the language, don't worry. There's a full introduction to Python that covers everything you need to know to be very successful in this bootcamp. So if you want to brush up on your Python skills, please head over to Appendix A at the end of this course, where we go step by step covering everything from the fundamental data types to containers, conditionals, loops, disk comprehensions, and much more. If you've already seen Python, if you're somewhat familiar with the Python language, you might consider using the appendix as more of a reference if you feel uncertain about something that we cover. All right, let's move on.